He vanished years ago. No calls, no explanations, nothing. Then suddenly he's standing outside my cafe in the Florida Keys, looking at me like he remembers every memory we ever made and every mistake he ever ran from. I always say the Florida Keys has this way of holding on to people, even the ones who swear they're never coming back. The kind of place where the air smells like salt and lime, and every sunrise looks like it's trying to apologize for something. And maybe that's why I stayed here running my family's old beachside cafe, while everyone else I grew up with drifted off into bigger, shinier lives, but somehow never happier ones. That morning felt like any other sun. Just waking up gulls fighting over leftover fries on the boardwalk and me standing behind the counter wiping down a table that honestly didn't need more wiping. But I liked keeping my hands busy because thinking too much before coffee always led me to places I didn't want to go, and then the bell over the door rang that soft little chime. I've heard every day since I was 10, but this time it hit different. My chest tightened, not because I knew who it was, but because some part of me had felt this moment coming for weeks, like the tide pulling back before a wave you can't outrun. I looked up, and there he was. Ethan Hale, the boy who carved his initials into the cafe railing with mine next to it. The boy who promised me he'd never forget this place or me and then left without a real goodbye. The boy who became a man somewhere far away from here. A man I barely recognized except for the eyes, because those eyes never changed. Warm brown with that quiet storm inside them. He said my name so softly, Maya, like it was something fragile he was afraid to break, and for a second I forgot how to breathe, or blink, or move. And I hated that he still had that effect on me after all these years, after all the hurt. He looked tired, not sleepy tired, but soul tired, the kind that sits behind your smile and weighs down your shoulders, and you could see the burnout hanging on him like a shadow, like the city had chewed him up and spit him out, and he'd crawled home hoping the ocean would fix what life broke. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there clutching my towel like it was a shield, because I wasn't ready for this. Not for him, not for the memories rushing in so fast they stung. He gave this small half smile, like he wasn't sure he deserved to smile at me, and said, I miss this place. And for a moment I almost said, I missed you too, but the word stuck somewhere between my ribs because the truth was complicated and painful and still unfinished. And just like that, the summer that would change everything began with a look, a breath, and a heartbeat. I wasn't ready to feel again. Would you have spoken to him right away or waited like Maya did? I told myself I wasn't going to make it awkward, even though awkward practically lived on my tongue when Ethan was around. But I still managed to mumble something like, welcome back, which felt too small, too polite, too. Nothing for the boy who once knew every version of me, the loud, happy ones, the angry, stubborn ones, the scared, quiet ones. But maybe that was the safest thing to say because anything bigger might have cracked me open in front of him. He stepped closer, and the sunlight from the cafe windows hit him in a way that made him look both familiar and impossibly different. Like the world had sanded him down, made him sharper in some places, softer in others, and I couldn't stop noticing the faint stress lines near his eyes, the ones you only get from long nights and long years and long fights with things you can't name. I asked how long you here for, and he said, I don't know yet, which wasn't the answer I wanted, but also wasn't one I could push on, so I just nodded, pretending like my heart wasn't trying to climb its way into my throat, because the boy who once promised forever had learned how to speak in. Maybe he ordered the usual. Like, he still remembered it. Iced coconut cold brew with extra sweet cream and 2 pumps of vanilla. And I tried not to let that feel like something, but it did because people forget whole chapters of their lives. But he remembered my cafe and his drink, and that just felt too intimate for someone who'd been gone so long. While I made it, he leaned on the counter and looked around at all the photos on the walls. My dad smiling with customers, the old fishing boats, the sunsets we'd collected like souvenirs from time, and he said it looks the same. And that hit deeper than I expected because everything looked the same, except me. I wasn't the girl who used to wait on the pier for him to come running up, yelling my name. I'd grown up and grown hurt and grown careful. I handed him his drink and our fingers brushed barely a second, but enough to jolt me in a way I hated noticing. And maybe he felt it too because he went still just for a breath, before pretending he didn't. Then he said, I heard your dad passed, and the softness in his voice undid something inside me because no one said it gently anymore. They said it like a fact, like weather, like news, but he said it like a wound, and I swallowed hard, trying to keep steady while telling him, yeah, last year heart complications, and he whispered, I'm sorry, Maya. And somehow that sorry felt heavier than any apology for the way he left. He sat at his old table by the window, the one we used to share, and I watched him through the corner of my eye as he stared out at the water like he was trying to remember how to breathe. And maybe I was doing the same behind the counter, pretending the space between us didn't ache like something still unfinished. Do you think Ethan came back for the town or for Maya? After the morning rush faded and the cafe slipped into that soft, late afternoon quiet where you can hear the waves clearer than the conversations, I noticed Ethan still sitting by the window. He wasn't scrolling or typing or pretending to be busy. He was just watching the ocean, like it was the only thing in the world that made sense anymore. And maybe it was a part of me wanted to walk over, ask him what happened to him out there in the big world, ask why he looked like he was carrying invisible bruises, ask if he was staying for real or just hiding for a bit. But every question felt like opening a door. I wasn't sure I could handle walking through, so instead I grabbed a tray of refills and wandered over like it was a casual decision, even though it wasn't. He looked up when I stopped by his table, and there was this tiny spark in his eyes, like he didn't expect me to come over but hoped I would, and that alone made my chest feel strange in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. I told him, you know, the old marina is still there, and he smiled the kind of smile that looked tired around the edges but real. He said, is the boat still there? And I almost laughed because of course he would ask about that boat, the one we spent half our childhood on, the one we swore would take us everywhere someday before life convinced us we needed bigger, faster things. I said, yeah, it's still there, just older like us. And he chuckled this soft, quiet sound I hadn't heard in years, and suddenly all those summers came rushing back: the sunscreen, the sea breeze, the late night confessions whispered over the hum of the old motor, and the promise that we'd fix it up one day. He asked me, want to go see it? And the question hung between us like an invitation and a memory and a risk. And I didn't trust myself to answer too quickly. So I played with the edge of the tray for a moment before saying, sure, maybe letting the wind decide the rest. We walked there together down the boardwalk, warmed by the sun and familiar footsteps, and every few breaths, I caught him looking at me like he was trying to line up who I was with, who I used to be. And honestly, I was doing the same with him because he moved slower, more thoughtful, like someone who had learned the hard way that nothing lasts, unless you take care of it. When we reached the marina, the boat was waiting for us, leaning a little to one side, weathered but still holding on, and Ethan whispered, wow, like seeing it broke something soft open in him. He ran his hand along the wood. The way you touch something you missed without realizing you missed it, and for a moment he looked like the boy I once knew, the one who believed in everything he said we could fix it up, maybe take it out again, and I felt the words settle inside me, warm, hopeful, dangerous, because I didn't know if he meant the boat or the pieces of us still lying somewhere in the past. Should Maya help him fix the boat or keep emotional distance? The sun was starting to slide lower in the sky, the kind of golden hour that makes everything feel softer than it really is. Or maybe I just wanted it to feel that way, because standing beside that old boat with Ethan again stirred up memories I'd packed away in boxes I thought I'd never open. He kept tracing the wood with his fingertips, studying every crack, every faded patch, like he was reading a history book written in salt and sun. He said, remember, when we tried to patch that hole with duct tape, and I laughed because how could I forget we thought we were geniuses, when really, we were just two kids believing duct tape could fix anything. Even the things we didn't want to admit were breaking. I said, yeah, and you swore it would hold. And he grinned this crooked grin that looked like it had been hiding for years. He said, well, it held for 6 minutes. That's something, right? And somehow 6 minutes felt like a metaphor for us lasting just long enough to feel real before everything fell apart. We climbed onto the deck slowly, carefully, like we were stepping back into a version of ourselves we hadn't seen in ages. He sat on the edge, legs dangling over the water, and I sat beside him, my shoulder close enough to feel the warmth of him, but not touching, because touching felt like crossing a line. I wasn't ready to cross. For a long moment, we just watched the water move, gentle and rhythmic, like it was trying to soothe whatever storm was inside him. Finally, I asked, so what really brought you home, Ethan? And he inhaled, like the question weighed more than he expected, like he knew it was coming, but still wasn't ready to answer it. He said, I burned out Maya, plain and simple. I worked 12-hour days, 7 days a week, chasing something I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore. The money, the pressure, the expectations. And then one morning I woke up and couldn't breathe. Not like panic, just emptiness, pure numbness. And I realized I hadn't seen the ocean in years, and I hadn't thought about anything that made me feel alive in even longer. His voice cracked just a little, and something inside me cracked with it, because the Ethan I knew had always been full of light, full of ideas, full of plans, and hearing him talk. Like this felt like watching a bright flame turn into smoke. He looked at me, then eyes soft but heavy, and said, I kept thinking about the pier, about this boat, about you, and I swear the world tilted a little. Hearing that, not because I believed it fully, but because it sounded like a truth he'd tried to swallow and couldn't anymore. I whispered, so you ran home, and he nodded. Yeah, I guess I did. And the honesty in it made something warm flicker in my chest, something I tried very hard not to name. The sky turned pink behind us, and the silence felt safe. Not awkward, not painful, just quiet in a way that felt like breathing for the first time in a long time. Do you think Ethan is telling Maya the full truth or holding something back? We stayed on that boat longer than either of us planned. The sky shifting from pink to purple to that deep indigo that makes the whole marina look like a dream. And maybe that's why I didn't pull away when Ethan walked me back to the cafe after, because everything felt softened by the night, like the world was giving us permission to remember without hurting. The boardwalk lights flickered above us, humming in that familiar way, and Ethan shoved his hands into his pockets, like he always did when he was nervous. I could tell he wanted to say something, but he kept swallowing the words like they might choke him if he let them out too soon. So I spoke first, trying to keep things light. The cafe closes early tomorrow. If you want to help me check the boat again, maybe see what still works. He blinked like he wasn't expecting me to offer anything, and then this slow, warm smile spread across his face, and it felt so real, so unguarded, that my heart skipped in a way I wished it didn't. He said, yeah, I'd like that more than you know. We reached the cafe steps, and for a moment, neither of us moved, like we were both waiting for the other to break, whatever fragile calm held us there. Finally, he said softly, I miss talking to you, Maya. And it wasn't loud or dramatic, just quiet, honest words slipping through the night and hitting me right where old feelings live. I told him I missed talking to you too, which was the truth, even if I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. Then he said goodnight and walked away down the boardwalk, and I stood there watching the shape of him fade into the dusk until he was just a shadow. And afterward, nothing at all. Later that night, when I closed up the cafe, I found myself staring at that carving on the railing, the one with our initials M+E scratched in with a stolen pocket knife. A lifetime ago, saltwater had worn it down, but not enough to erase it, and for a moment I touched the letters, wondering if they meant something still, or if I was just letting nostalgia twist reality into something prettier than it was. I went home upstairs to my tiny apartment above the cafe and tried to sleep, but my mind kept replaying the way Ethan said my name, and the way his shoulders looked a little lighter when he talked about fixing the boat, and the way he kept glancing at me like he was afraid I'd disappear if he looked away too long. Sometime around midnight, I heard a soft tapping on my window. Not loud, just gentle, like someone didn't want to startle me. I walked over, pulled the curtain aside, and there he was on the sidewalk below, looking up with that almost shy expression that melted something inside me. He held up his phone screen, glowing in the dark. It said, "Forgot to ask what time tomorrow," and I laughed quietly, opening my window enough to whisper 10. He nodded, gave a small, grateful smile, and walked away again. This time slower, softer, like he didn't want to leave at all. And for the first time in a long time, I went to bed with a feeling that wasn't loneliness or routine or exhaustion, but something lighter, something warm, something dangerously close to hope. Do you think Ethan came back to rebuild his life or to rebuild what he had with Maya? I woke up before my alarm, which never happens, mostly because mornings and I have never been friends, but that day felt different, lighter somehow, as if my body knew Ethan would show up and didn't want me stumbling out there looking like sleep want to fight with me. I got ready, slowly choosing a simple sundress, tying my hair up, trying not to overthink any of it, even though I absolutely was. When I stepped downstairs to open the cafe, the air felt cooler than usual. The kind of morning breeze that smells like coconut sunscreen and new beginnings. The kind of breeze that makes the palms sway like they're waking up too. I unlocked the door, switched on the lights, and tried to focus on prepping pastries instead of the small nervous flutter in my stomach. I heard his footsteps before I saw him, heavy but steady. And when I looked up, he was standing at the door holding 2 iced coffees in one hand and a bag of fresh, warm empanadas from that little stand down the road in the other. He smiled that soft early morning smile and said, "Bribery for waking up this early?" And he held the coffee out like an offering. I said, "I don't need bribery," and he grinned good, because I wasn't going to stop doing it anyway, and something about that made my cheeks warm in a way I pretended not to notice. We took our breakfast out to the deck sitting on the old wooden steps, facing the calm water. The ocean looked like glass, the sun not fully risen, yet painting everything in muted gold for a moment. We didn't talk at all, just sat there drinking our coffee, legs stretched out, shoulders brushing lightly every now and then, in a way neither of us commented on. He finally said, "You look happy this morning." And I raised a brow to I, and he nodded. "Yeah, like really happy." And one little part of me wanted to ask, "You mean happier than I was when you left?" But I didn't, because the moment felt too gentle to break. After we finished eating, we headed back to the marina, the boat waiting for us exactly where we left it. Ethan hopped on with this easy confidence and reached out a hand to help me step up, and for a second I hesitated. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I did, and that scared me more than anything. But I took his hand anyway, warm, steady, familiar. He started checking the motor, humming under his breath, the same tune he used to whistle when we were kids. Something old, something sweet. And I found myself watching him, not in the way you watch someone you're curious about, but in the way you watch someone who was once a part of you and maybe still is. Then he said quietly without looking up, "Maya, I know I hurt you." And the world seemed to freeze just a little, because I wasn't ready for that. Not at 8:40 in the morning, not with the sun barely awake, but he kept going. "I don't expect forgiveness or anything. I just need you to know I didn't forget you, not once." Even when I tried to, and hearing that felt like someone pressing on a bruise I pretended wasn't there. The waves lapped softly against the dock, and I stood there staring at him, wondering if this was the beginning of healing or another pull towards something that could break me all over again. Do you think Ethan deserves a chance to explain? Or should Maya protect her heart a bit longer? For a moment after Ethan said, "He didn't forget me," the world just went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but that heavy, charged kind of quiet that always comes before something important. I gripped the edge of the boat trying to steady myself because part of me wanted to believe him, and another part of me wanted to run before old wounds woke up fully again. I finally said, "Ethan, why did you really leave back then? Not the polite version, not the grown-up version. I want the truth, the one you never said," and his shoulders tensed like he'd been waiting for that question since the moment he saw me again. He sat down slowly on the bench inside the boat, elbows on his knees staring at the floor, like he was searching for the right words in the cracks of the old wood. I stayed standing because I needed the distance, needed the space to breathe. He said, "Maya, I got scared. And I know that sounds stupid, but I did. I was 18, and everyone kept telling me I had to get out of this town, break free, chase something bigger. And I thought, if I stayed here with you, I'd never leave. And the truth terrified me. I blinked, confused, not expecting that at all. "You were scared of me?" I asked, and he shook his head. "No, I was scared of what you meant to me. You were my safe place, my one constant, my favorite everything, and I didn't know how to handle that at an age when I barely knew myself." The words hit me hard, right in the center of everything I'd built walls around for years. I sat down across from him, feeling the boat rock gently beneath us, the water tapping lightly against the hull, like it was listening too. He said when I left I thought distance would make it easier to focus, but instead, it just made everything worse. I missed you every day, and the longer I stayed gone, the harder it got to come back because I knew how much I'd hurt you, and I didn't think I deserved to see you again. I didn't know what to say to that, the honesty of it, the rawness of it. It cracked me open in ways I wasn't prepared for. I whispered, "You could have written. You could have called," and he nodded, eyes soft with regret. I know I should have, but every time I tried, the words felt too small for what I owed you, and then time just kept passing, and suddenly years were gone. I looked out at the water, trying to calm the storm rising in my chest, this mixture of hurt and relief, and something painfully close to longing, because here he was finally giving me the truth I begged for in silence for years, but it also made something inside me ache deeper. Then he said, "Maya, I'm not asking for anything, not forgiveness, not another chance, I just needed you to know why." And somehow that made tears sting behind my eyes, because when someone tells the truth like that, you feel it in places you didn't know were waiting to heal. The sun was climbing higher, the day warming around us, and for the first time since he came back, I didn't feel angry or confused or guarded. I just felt human sitting across from someone who once broke me and maybe didn't mean to. Do you think Ethan's confession is honest, or is he protecting himself? I didn't plan to cry, but sometimes tears don't care about timing. They just show up and demand to be felt. So I sat there blinking fast, pretending the sunlight was too bright, while Ethan waited quietly, giving me space without stepping away. And somehow that made everything hit even harder, because silence with him never felt empty. It felt full, like he was listening. Even when I wasn't speaking, I finally said, "You broke my heart, Ethan." Not dramatically, not angrily, just softly, like the truth had been sitting in my chest too long and needed to breathe. He swallowed hard, looking like the words cut him, but he didn't look away. He didn't try to defend himself. He just nodded and said, I know, and I'm so sorry, Maya. I should have fought harder for us. I should have stayed. And hearing that made something in me tremble because it was the apology I never thought I'd hear. The wind picked up, brushing my hair into my face, and when I tucked it behind my ear, I felt his eyes on me gentle but searching like he was memorizing who I'd grown into. His gaze moved, slow, not hungry, not desperate, just thoughtful. And seeing that made my heartbeat trip in a way that felt unfair. I said, you can't just come back and expect everything to be okay, and he shook his head quickly. I don't expect that at all. I don't expect anything from you except your honesty. And if that means you never want me here, then I'll respect it. And that almost made me laugh because he had no idea how complicated my feelings were, how badly part of me wished I could trust him again, and how terrified another part of me was to even try. We climbed off the boat and walked along the dock, not touching, but somehow still connected by the space between us. The water sparkled under the sun, full of movement, full of life. And it made me realize something. Healing doesn't always start with forgiveness. Sometimes it starts with understanding. He paused midway down the dock and said, Maya, do you remember the summer we promised we'd learn how to navigate without a compass? Because we said we'd always know where home was. And I felt my breath catch because I remembered every bit of it. The laughter, the boldness, the stupid confidence of being 16 and believing in forever. I whispered, yeah, I remember. And he smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind that holds hope and regret in the same breath. He said, I lost that somewhere along the way. Maybe in the city, maybe in the noise, but being back here with you, I feel something I haven't felt in years, like I'm not lost anymore. And that was the moment I felt the shift, not dramatic, not cinematic, just a quiet click inside me like a loose piece sliding back where it belonged. Part of me still hurt, but another part recognized the truth in his voice. And the truth was this: Ethan wasn't the same boy who left, and I wasn't the same girl who stayed. But that didn't mean we couldn't meet again somewhere new. When we reached the end of the dock, I looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for anything that felt false, but everything I saw was real, tired, hopeful, honest. And for the first time, I let myself wonder what it would mean to let him in again. Not all at once, but slowly, like the tide, reclaiming the shore inch by inch. Do you think Maya should let herself start trusting Ethan again? The sunset that evening didn't look real. It draped the sky in soft orange and pink, like someone had painted it just for the keys. And maybe for me, because I needed something gentle. After the day I'd had, I walked along the beach with my sandals dangling from my hand, letting the warm sand slide between my toes and trying to make sense of the way Ethan had looked at me earlier, like he was seeing every version of me at once. The girl I was, the woman I became, and everything in between. I kept replaying our conversation, the apology, the honesty, the quiet sadness in his voice, and each time it hit a little different, softer maybe, but deeper too. And I couldn't tell if that made me brave or foolish, because letting him close again would take strength, but not letting him close would hurt in a different way, the kind that lingers like a bruise you poke, even though you know it'll sting. The cafe lights glowed in the distance, the open windows spilling warm yellow light onto the sand, and I could hear faint laughter inside familiar voices mixed with new ones. And for a second, I thought I should join them. Distract myself, blend into the noise, but my feet didn't listen. They took me toward the back porch where the ocean breeze felt honest and quiet and uncomplicated. I found Ethan sitting on the steps, elbows on his knees, staring out at the water like he was trying to remember something important. He didn't turn when I approached, he just said softly, "You always walk. Like your thoughts are too heavy and need fresh air," and that made me freeze because only someone who really knew me would notice something like that. I sat beside him, leaving a small space between us. Not a wall, just a boundary, and he glanced at me with this tentative, almost shy smile that didn't match the confident boy he used to be, but matched the man he'd become, the one trying to rebuild trust one breath at a time. I asked, "What are you thinking about?" And he said, "You," and not in a romantic, dramatic way, more like he was admitting the weather or the time of day. Then he added, "I'm trying to figure out how to be someone who deserves a second chance," and something in my chest tightened, not painfully, just with a slow, warm ache. I told him I don't need perfect Ethan, I just need honest Ethan. And he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks, maybe years. Then he said, "I can do honest, but it might be messy." And I said, "Good, I don't trust Heidi," and we both laughed softly because it was too true. The sky darkened, then the stars started showing up one by one, scattered and bright, and I felt the world tilt just slightly like something was shifting again, not breaking, not building yet, just moving. And then he said, "Maya, can I tell you something?" And the way his voice dipped low made my stomach flip in a way I wasn't prepared for. He looked at me full on, no hesitation, no masks, and said, "I never stopped loving you." And the words didn't crash into me. They drifted slow and warm and terrifying and beautiful all at once, like waves rolling over bare feet, catching you off guard even when you're watching. And in that moment, I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth in his eyes was too much, too bright, too raw, so all I did was breathe, and for once he understood my silence without needing to fill it. How should Maya respond to Ethan's confession? Should she speak or stay silent a bit longer? The final evening of summer arrived with the kind of golden light that felt like it belonged only to the Keys. The sky blazed in pinks and oranges, the ocean shimmering like liquid fire beneath the setting sun. I stood on the pier, breathing in the salty air, heart fluttering, and watched him, the boy I'd known all my life, the man I'd almost lost to time, approach with that familiar smile. He carried the old boat we had spent weeks fixing together, its paint glistening in the sunset. I laughed softly, the sound mingling with the crashing waves, a mix of relief and happiness that I hadn't felt in years. "It's perfect," I said, running my hand along the smooth edge. "It's not just the boat," he said, voice low and earnest. "I think we fixed us too." I blinked, feeling the lump in my throat. Those words, simple but honest, held the weight of everything we had been through, the summers, the distance, the hurt, and now, the healing. We sat on the pier, legs dangling over the edge, watching the horizon. The water reflected our smiles, our hands brushing occasionally, small touches that spoke louder than words ever could. I realized then that all the old wounds, the misunderstandings, the unspoken regrets, they had shaped us, but they didn't define us. I was scared, he admitted, finally breaking the comfortable silence. I thought coming back might ruin everything, or that maybe you wouldn't want me here. I reached for his hand, intertwining fingers. I was scared too, but being afraid doesn't mean we shouldn't try, and I never stopped caring. Not for you, not for us. The waves lapped softly beneath us, a gentle rhythm that matched the beating of our hearts. He turned to me, eyes searching, hopeful, and I knew without saying a word that this was the moment we had been waiting for, the chance to reclaim what we had lost, to start anew. I love you, he whispered. I smiled, tears sparkling in my eyes. I love you too. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the last of its warmth over the keys. In that moment, everything felt right. The boat, the pier, the golden water, the soft breeze, and the man beside me who had always been my home. As night fell, we stayed on the pier, talking, laughing, planning, dreaming. There would be challenges ahead, sure, but we had learned that love, the real kind, was resilient. It weathered storms, healed old scars, and grew stronger when nurtured. The Keys had given me sunsets, waves, and endless nights under stars, but it had also given me him, my childhood best friend, my partner, my heart. And as we watched the stars reflect on the water, I knew that this was only the beginning, not just of a summer, but of a lifetime we would build together, hand in hand, heart in heart, under endless sunsets that promised second chances. Have you ever had a second chance at love with someone from your past? Would you risk it, knowing it could heal old wounds and create something new?